Good morning. I'm Zachary Rinkins, standing in for our host, Mr. Bill Diggs, the Executive Director of the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust. And this is Black Prosperity with the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust, and we're here at the Miami Community Newspaper Studios. And with us today are two gentlemen I respect, and they offer a lot of expertise in our community. And we're here to talk about a very timely subject, the state of Black residents and housing here in Miami-Dade County. And so with us today to really unpack this conversation is one of our HAC committee members. And when I say HAC committee, Housing Action Committee members, is Mr. James Bunyan. Mr. James Bunyan is the broker and realtor with Millennium 3 Realty. And we also have a longtime housing advocate and champion in this community. He's also a member of NARAB, South Florida, Marc R. Williams. Marc R. Williams is a lending executive with a local funding agency, and he'll tell you more about them. So welcome to the show, gentlemen.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you.
All right. My background is as a journalist, and so I really like to start with the facts.
Right.
Our outgoing, and she just submitted her resignation, but our outgoing U.S. HUD Secretary, Marcia Fudge, came to Miami-Dade County and declared it the epicenter, rather, of the nation's housing affordability crisis. I want to start with you, Marc, to talk about, like, as a member of NARAB, what is the impact of a statement like that, of a reality like that, when we have people who are on the margins of the economy and have to deal with so many socioeconomic disparities? How do we help them, and how does NARAB help them navigate that type of crisis here in Miami-Dade County?
Great question. So once again, my name is Marc Williams, and I'm a board member, but also a licensed loan officer with Paramount Residential Mortgage Group, but a board member of NARAB, National Association of Real Estate Brokers. And, that organization started in 1947 when we as Black individuals couldn't hold our real estate license. And so 12 African Americans got together and said, you know what? We're going to change that. And going forward, I think the issues that we're having right now are with our communities and marginalized community as a whole is really understanding that, one, there are real estate or realtors, as we call ourselves, out there in the market to be able to help educate first-time home buyers about the real estate process and the wealth accumulation that comes along with owning your own home. And so I think the other side of that issue is really understanding that we have to do more education. We've got to have more resources, whether they're financial resources or just information that we can share with marginalized communities, and really helping African Americans understand that homeownership process and really how to use homeownership to build wealth in the communities.
And I'm glad
I think
you
there's
talked
a
about
disconnect with that.
I'm glad you talked about creating wealth. James Bunyan is someone who, I look to and ask questions and leverage from expertise, and so he's in the community as well. So James, talk about that wealth creating ability that you can leverage home ownership to create wealth and really build your American dream.
Again, I appreciate you having me here, and that's a really great question, because when we see study after study that shows there's a wealth gap in net worth for Black families versus white and other families, sure, one of the key factors in that, and 80% of the time, is the equity you have in your home.
Yeah.
And particularly the Black community was prevented from even obtaining mortgages up until the early 70s. So we only really deep into one generation of trying to buy homes. And the hurdles now aren't as in your face, they're more mental and subliminal. For example, we're easier to hold on to negative facts about buying a home because we go by what's on a post, Instagram, and we adhere to that, not knowing that did this person do the research, or is something that's speaking off the top of their head. Right now, I find people saying that I'm going to wait till the market gets better. Waiting creates a negative situation, because let's say that someone say that in order to beat the 9 o'clock rush hour traffic, just wait an hour and you'll get there a lot quicker because the traffic dies down. You hear that, somebody posted, okay, great, I'm gonna do that. What if 20,000 other people said the same thing, not everyone leaving an hour later? Same thing with buying a home right now. A lot of people say they're going to wait for the rates to come down. What that's going to do is create a situation, if rates do come down 0.25%, people are going to have the perception it's time to buy again, a rush on the market. Now you got a seller's market all over again, where the sellers could pick and choose on multiple offers. It's a bidding war. Just give you a quick example. Let's say someone wants to buy a $400,000 property right now, and let's say the interest rate is at 7%. Looking at principal and interest on a 30-year mortgage fixed, payment's going to be around $2,660. If they wait to the property till the rates drop 0.25%, let's say it goes from 7% to 6.75%. Same property, now you got a bidding war. Now it goes up to $415,000.
Wow.
And now you got a lower rate, but your payment now is $30 more. So instead of paying the $2,660, you're gonna be paying about $2,690. And over 30 years, just in the interest rate alone, that's an additional $11,000. Not to mention with the bidding war, if it pushes up to $15,000 more because of the bidding war, that's an additional $15,000. So you're paying.
That you're financing over a 30-year period.
Right.
Now, Marc, I want to bring you in because you put together financing for a lot of people.
Yeah.
There's this colloquial statement that's in your industry that says, marry the house, date the rate. So talk a little bit about that, because James talked about sometimes there's fluctuation, certainly in the market with the funding and the interest rates. Talk a little bit about how it's important to get the house, but date the rate.
Date the rate. So, it's a great point. And I would say a lot of us really need to understand that when you're looking to purchase a home long term, it's important to understand that the interest rates go up and down, right? It's cyclical. So if you don't understand that part of that process, what ends up happening is you'll pay attention to what the media is saying and saying, listen, it's at 8% right now and it's not a great time to buy it. But if you look at that historically, right, those rates are not bad rates, actually, okay? It's just that we're coming off of a market as well where they were at 2 and 3%. And so a lot of individuals are using that to be able to say, I'm going to wait till they're 2 or 3%, right, to have it happen again. And what ends up happening is they're waiting out 10 years. So I always tell them, let's talk about down payment assistance programs. Let's talk about accessing funds on a city level, state level, and even on a county level to really be able to help you bridge the gap between what you have and what you need to make that transaction work.
And I'm glad you said that, because that's our calling card, the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust.
Yep.
Since 1995, we've helped almost 8,000 people purchase homes. More than 3,000 of those people have been people that look like you and myself. So talk about the importance of leveraging these down payment assistance programs, because getting back to the facts, the average house, according to Zillow here in Miami-Dade County, is flirting with the $500,000 mark.
Yep.
And so how can these down payment assistance programs help you just really attack that price tag?
Right. So with the down payment assistance programs, you're helping a first-time home buyer bridge the gap between what they have and what they need, right? As I've mentioned. But I will say this, a lot of the down payment assistance programs help a lot of first-time home buyers in the following ways. One, the principal reduction. So now you're not paying on a $300,000 property. If you're able to get assistance in the amount of, let's say, $50,000, just to take rough numbers, you're really financing $250,000, thereby making your payment more affordable for you as well.
Hold up. So in these situations, if we're talking about your situation or your example of $300,000, I basically walk into this situation with $50,000 worth of equity.
Absolutely. Correct.
So I want to ask you, James, talk about some of the times where you've helped clients leverage these programs, and what are some of the instances that you have been seeing?
Right. See, a key thing also is people think affordable housing means price. And in most cases, it does, but it also means the products they could use to make the home payment more affordable. Right. Like I've had clients that by themselves only qualify for $123,000. But loan officers like Marc and other ones have the ability to layer multiple programs with the MDEAT program, some programs with PHCD, where this client was getting over $150,000 in subsidies, which means instead of affording the $123,000, they can go up to $260,000. Even in this market, you can find, especially in Southern Dade, condos within that price range. And a lot of people think these programs are for the poor. You could be a single individual making a little bit over
$100,000,
$100,000 and
yes.
still qualify for the program. You could be a family of 5, mother, father with 3 kids, with a household income of $156,000 and still qualify for the program. So the stigma of these programs being for the poor need to be just erased, because it's not. It's a very good product for middle class, to expand the middle class, not just to help from the top down, but from the bottom up. And we all know that once there's home ownership in some of these undesirable neighborhoods, it becomes more desirable once someone have a stake, of invested interest in it, because they're going to protect their investment. And we got to get over this mindset of, I don't want to live in certain areas, because like say Richmond Heights, for example, 2015, 2016, I was selling homes in there for like 160, 170.
Wow.
2019 in Richmond Heights, I was selling probably with 225, 250. You can't find anything decent in there for under 475, 500,000 just 4 years later.
Wow.
So our perception of what's a good opportunity needs to shift. And also, I feel there need to be more collective economics with families and even co-workers to come together to start buying properties, because this.
So you're lining into my next question, because other communities are cooperating to buy homes as families and things of that nature, and build transition plans. So according to the National Association of Realtors, there's a huge disparity as it relates to Black homeowners versus our cultural counterparts. And so with Black homeowners, about 44% of Black homeowners, Black people own homes, whereas 72% of our white brothers and sisters own homes. Talk about that disparity, and just talk about some solutions in terms of how we attack that disparity and really shrink the gap. I want to start with Marc and then come back to you.
So wonderful question. And I will say we have to look at the history of where we as a people as well have been able to not tap into the market, right? And so when we talk about redlining in our communities as well, that's happened, after the early 1930s, 1940s, we're still playing catch up to a certain point, right? And so that gap and disparity is out there. But also, it's going to relate back to our education and where we can access resources to being able to understand how to bridge that gap.
Well, where are those resources, James, into the community? If I'm looking to purchase a home, I want more information. Where are those resources in our community? Do we have them?
Yes, we do. And the key thing is to align yourself with a real estate professional, whether it be a realtor or a loan officer.
Do these people have to be licensed?
The realtors, yes, and the loan officers,
absolutely.
yes.
Okay, now how can I check the licenses and make sure that I'm dealing with, because a lot of scamming goes down here in Miami-Dade County. So
I know for the realtors, you can go to the Department of Business and Professional Regulation.
With the state of Florida, right?
Correct. You could do it by name, you could do it by license number, you could do it by entity. So there is public portals out there to check the credential. It even gives a report if there's any complaints against the individual. I think Marc can speak on the check.
On the mortgage side, it's the National Mortgage Licensing Services, and MLS, to be able to verify whether or not an individual has a license to be able to practice.
So listen, you want to get someone who's licensed to handle your business for you. And what are some other resources people can leverage?
Well, before we go into resources, I think it's real important also to make sure that you align yourself with someone that understands the products to begin with, because my personal experience, I've had people come to me that told me, and I sat on the board of MDEAT, that says that my lender didn't want to send me to MDEAT because they were out of funds. And nothing could be further from the truth, because we have a budget that rolls over there and we have a surplus. So I realized there's a lot of misinformation given to particularly our community. That's why the dropout rate is so high once they get that denial. I have clients that was told me they were denied by a bank, didn't know why, but come to find out because they had a late payment 10 months ago. They say you don't qualify for FHA. Instead of saying, okay, all you need to do is A, B, C, and D, and you should be good to go, they don't get that information. So they get discouraged. They go and get the new car or sign the lease, not realize there's a path forward. But as far as resources are concerned, there's housing counseling agencies that you could sit in. You don't necessarily have to be in the process of buying a home, but just to educate yourself to see what the process is, because there's no way you're going to know everything about all the different aspects of, but the more information you gather, the easier it is to ask the questions to those professionals. And if you're a home buyer, from the realtor, the lender, the title company, the inspector, everybody works for you. They're your employees, so they're accountable to you. So you have to feel comfortable asking the loan officer the question, asking the realtors the question. Anytime you ask someone a question and you get pushback or they get upset, that's a red flag. So you need to find out who aligns themselves with the best interest as far as you're concerned. And unfortunately, a lot of times, we have to look like the individual in order for them to trust us, and it's very few of us out there.
Stop taking my questions. That's what I was going to ask Marc, because we talked about engaging your team, building the right team to help you acquire your home, and also hiring people who understand a lot of these down payment assistance programs.
Yes.
Because I can tell you, family, there are a lot of down payment assistance programs that are available for you to purchase your homes. You just have to be able to leverage them, and it's very intimidating sometimes. But people like Marc and NARAB, a lot of your mission and outreach is really about making that connection and doing that extra work. So talk about some of the advantages of hiring someone or a professional that might be associated with NARAB.
Right. So with NARAB, our mission is democracy in housing, right? We're here to definitely expose those issues that are coming out, right? But also to empower and elevate realists that are licensed and want to do that work. And I think there's a stigma out there for a lot of real estate agents and even maybe some mortgage loan officers as well, is that the programs and the resources out there do not work. They take too long, right? And that's the furthest thing from the truth. And why I say that is because that's a way to deter that marginalized individual from accessing tons and millions of dollars. As an example, Hometown Heroes, another great program that is now in its third year and rolling out another $100 million to helping first-time home buyers this July. So these programs have been around even before the Hometown Heroes. And so I always say, work with a realtist, work with someone and an organization that understands how to help you bridge that gap and accessing the down payment assistance programs to be able to do that. And you really want to understand how to work with other professionals when we're talking about the title companies, when we're talking about loan officers or even inspectors. Create your team. And I always say this, you got to have a motivator, right? Someone on your team outside of the professionals that's going to keep you motivated, that's going to keep you accountable to the process. So those are all the great resources that I know NARAB and the realtors that are on there can definitely provide.
So let's unpack this. Process. I'm a young professional looking to purchase a home. What's the timeline? Like, how long, James, typically does that timeline work? Because I loved how you talked about, look, you might not be ready to purchase a home, but engage the housing counseling agencies and things of that nature. But once I feel that I'm ready, like what do I need to have, and how long does that process typically take? What are you seeing in the market right now? What does my credit score need to be? How long does it take? Because it's very competitive purchasing a home. A lot of people are competing for the same house. So talk a little bit about that.
Right. Once you start this journey, it's very important to understand a lot of key factors. It's just like if you're taking a trip to someplace you've never been before, and you have to rely on Google Map or GPS. The first thing that software, that program has to figure out is where you're at right now. If it can't figure out where you're at right now, it can't tell you to turn left, go right, go straight, or whatever the case may be. Same thing with buying a home. If you don't know your credit score, you can't speculate. Even these things you sign up for that tells you your score, that, in my experience, doesn't align with what the bank pulls. Correct. It is really geared to trigger engagements where they send you alert, check this out, check that out. So you really need to sit down with the loan officer and let them pull your credit, try merger to see what are the hurdles you need to clear. It may be something about paying down the debt. Some people may say, well, I got too much credit card debt, I don't think I could buy. That's speculation. They're going to base it on your minimum payment. Now, if you're carrying a high balance, that may cause an issue. But the main thing is sit down with a loan officer, one who has access to all the programs, that can layer the programs together, because you can put these programs together to become, be in a position to afford a property of your choice. So knowing where you're at right now, sit down with a loan officer. They'll give you the information. I always advise my clients, look, contact me first. because long as I'm in the loop first, I'm the one who does the follow-up with those loan officers, with the credit counseling agencies, whoever needs to be involved in order to make sure this person's successful. So sit down with a loan officer, figure out where you're at. Yeah, they're going to pull your credit, going to take a hit on it, but there's a lot less of a hit if you let something drag on until the point you're ready to buy. So sit down with a loan officer. They're either going to tell you, yeah, you're ready to go, or do A, B, C, and D. Once that loan officer tell you A, B, C, and D, is my job to step in and say, okay, what do you need me to assist you with? Okay, contact this person. You need to take care of this. You need to take care of that. But make sure the people you choose to have on your team is connected to the resources. Because I've had clients that call up a loan officer randomly and say, do you have any first-time home buyer programs? They say yes.
No. Yes or no.
They say yes, but the only thing they're referring to is FHA loan, not none of the other
internal
subsidies.
products, right.
And a lot of people,
the local resources available to them.
I find that Dade County and Broward has some of the best programs that I've ever heard of in order to get people in the home. So there's a lot of resources out there, and people miss that. So the most important thing is find someone work with NARAB that has the community at heart. Agent like myself that's been working these programs since 1996. Yeah. So I remember '96 a program called Acorn Housing that did similar thing, advocate for lower rates and everything for the first-time home buyers. But align yourself with someone that understands your needs and understand what resources to send you after. Like I said, affordable housing, not price, is also product. So start with finding out where you're at right now and work with someone that could point you in the right direction for every resource available to you. Because you could layer 2, 3, and sometimes 4 of these programs on top of each other. And you have to have an agent that knows how to negotiate these contracts in order to make it palatable for the seller and the seller's agent, because sometimes they see these programs, and because of the misinformation, a lot of listing agents are afraid of these programs. So it's also the job of that realtor to explain and give them assurance that, no, I have this process under control, this is the real time frame, and this is my checks and balances.
Now, question. Talk about the timeline, Marc. When I think I'm ready to purchase a home, and when I get the keys and the closing and that type of period. Let's help people understand the timeline, a realistic timeline. This is a very competitive market.
Right. It is a very competitive market. I will say this. The better you're informed with gathering all the documentation, the quicker that process can be for you as well. So as James mentioned, you definitely want to have your team picked out, whoever you're going to go forward with, but definitely also making sure that you understand what the lender is going to be looking for as a way of documentation, your pay stubs, your bank statements, your income tax documentation, so that you get that documentation to that lender loan officer as soon as possible, because that can hurt the timeline if it takes you 2 weeks to go get a tax return or a pay stub, right? And then if you have your team in place, you can easily, even with down payment assistance programs, close deals within 30 days, so to 45 days. And in this market where there's a lot of families that are keeping their or sellers that are keeping their property and not being able to sell it, this is a great opportunity to be able, as a first-time home buyer, connect with the realtors and be able to make an offer on that contract or on that property, to be able to say, I can close this even with down payment assistance within 30 to 45 days. I'll share a quick story with you. I was able to get an individual in the city of Miramar, as an example, $75,000 in assistance. Now, people will say, well, why so much money, right? Well, it helps because it lowers the amount borrowed, but for this person, it also helped them come out of pocket with literally $2,000. So when we talk about those types of programs, when we talk about those types of processes, we were able to close that transaction within 30 to 45 days. But it all depended upon the team that first-time home buyer had to be able to make it a smooth transaction. So we've got to begin to dispel those myths out there that the programs take too long or the process takes too long for home ownership. There's deals that without DPA can close in 10 to 15 days. If you are realistic about the process and know exactly what's required of you as that first-time home buyer, and putting together your powerful team in order to win that.
Well, we talked about some of the issues that African Americans in their quest for home ownership have historically had to contend with, but we're seeing some spots where, even back in the 60s, where the racism was more pernicious, where a lot of the practices were more pronounced, that we had more home ownership. We had more home ownership in those circumstances, and we were closer to we were closer to over 50% of Black people owning homes, and so we've seen some step backs in that direction. What do you attribute some of that to, and how do we overcome it?
I mean, the first thing I see is the access to information and who's your sphere of influence, because pessimistic people tend to gravitate to each other. Optimistic people gravitate
To each other.
So,
Yeah, sure.
like I was using an example earlier, once we hear something negative, we start using that as an excuse of why we're not engaging more and finding out what's the path forward. You cannot be denied finding that. They could deter you, they could delay you, but if you know the process of working with someone that knows what you qualify for, they're going to fight for it. They're going to be your advocate. And we're living in a time now where it's easier to say it's too hard right now. And that's when other groups swoop in because no one else is advancing the opportunities that's right there in front of them. So that group thinking, that herd mentality will cause us to miss out on opportunities, because when I was encouraging people to live in traditionally Black neighborhoods, buy here, for whatever the perception is, they were discouraged from doing it. Now I have clients that wish they can still afford to live in some of those communities.
Sure. Yeah.
You have to see value before other people see it. That's when you get in early, just like, let's say Bitcoin. People got in early making a ton of money because they saw the potential. We tend not to want to see the potential. We want to do get the opinions of people who don't have the expertise. I always tell my clients, look, I know this process is going to be stressful, it's an emotional roller coaster ride, but one thing I ask you not to do is get advice from someone that's still renting.
Yep.
If you're going to get advice from someone that has a successful experience, because they're going to project their negativity onto you. And as humans, it's easier to be pessimistic. So when we do fail, it's already anticipated, and so a man thinketh.
Yeah, self-fulfilling prophecy.
Exactly.
Right. So what are your thoughts on that, Marc?
So, it's really a challenging market. It is. But if you're seeking advice from true professionals and asking the right questions and know exactly what to look for, what does your credit score need to be? What's the minimum amount that you need to have in the bank saved? How can you tap into some of those other resources? Whether or not you believe it's the right time to buy, I think that a lot of individuals need to understand that it's always a great time to buy if you have the path on how to do that. And so that's where I think a lot of individuals are deterred. They're hearing a lot of negative things in the market and don't necessarily want to jump in. And I'll tell you, if you had owned 4 or even 1 property 3-4 years ago, the value of that property today would have skyrocketed.
Absolutely.
And so it's about getting in the game at any point in time and realizing that, we got to get out of the whole, this is going to be your forever home, right? It does not have to be your forever home. Sure. When we think about that, we've got to think about how do we use this particular property to leverage to the next, to build that wealth building asset. And so I say to a lot of first time home buyers, get your team together, understand where you are, understand where the market is going, and look at it as an opportunity to get in the market and own something. Your landlords get it. They understand that you're paying for their equity, right? And you don't want to do that any longer. You want to be able to pay for your own equity or get your own equity to be able to take that equity out, maybe even buy another home, or maybe even open up a small business or put your children through schools. So those are all great opportunities to use the wealth accumulation that a property can give. So tap into the resources.
Now, what is your, what are your top 3 tips for prospective home buyers in this market?
Number one, know where you're at right now.
Exactly.
Know your credit score, know your debt to income ratio, because that's going to dictate how much home you can afford. Number 2, be optimistic. Educate yourself. Know what your options are out there. So therefore, once things come up, even envision worst case scenario. If you can't do it right now, have a plan, because once you have a plan, crisis or deterrent don't become as devastating to you because you have a mental plan to navigate around it. And 3, be confident. Put that fear out of you, because it's fear what keeps us from moving forward. That analysis paralysis, or you hear there's going to be a better market coming up. I remember after the crash in 2008, there was a rumor that there was going to be another wave of foreclosures, what kept a lot of people out of a market where they could have been buying houses that's selling for $600,000 a day for $120,000 back in 2010, 2012. So those three things are very important moving forward. And like piggyback on what Marc was saying, we all pay a mortgage. It's either going to be our own mortgage or our landlord's mortgage.
Landlord's mortgage. But give me your top three, Marc.
My top three would be definitely one, seek your professionals. I'll go back to that. Seek the right professionals and vet them, right? Do your research on them as well. If they say that they've been doing affordable housing programs, how many loans have they done in the last 6 months or the last 3 months? So vet your professional. Next, I would say, it's all about mindset, right? Mindset is a big thing. If you don't understand where you really want to go and the benefits of what that path looks like and the outcome, then you're going to fail. You got to have the right mindset to be able to do that. And then number three, get your finances in order. This is the time to get your finances in order as a first-time home buyer. If you know that you've been struggling with credit, let's get you hooked up with a HUD-certified counseling agency to walk through that. If you know that it's finances that you're dealing with, start to understand your budget, putting aside money to be able to purchase that home. So those would be my top three.
All right. And so we started the show kind of learning more about NARAP. Tell us a little bit about Millennium 3 Realty.
Well, Millennium 3, we cater to a host of different type of clients. Our biggest focus is with the first-time home buyer. And you don't necessarily have to utilize the programs in order for us to use our services, but if you do qualify for it, we want to make sure that fits within you. Another thing we focus on is a little bit off, but it still ties in, is helping families who's inherited properties or properties that's in distress to get maximum wealth out of it if they need to sell, because I'm finding that, people that sell to these predatory investors, their matrix is they will offer you no more than 70% of what that property is worth. And if you're thinking that you're saving in fees, the average real estate commission is 5 to 6%. But if you're leaving 30% on the table on a $400,000 property, that's $120,000 that you're leaving on the table. Yeah. So, we would just focus on advocating for the clients, whether it be buyers or sellers. We educate you through the whole process, and they're at every call to answer those questions. Because I always tell my clients, there's no such thing as a dumb question, only one you don't answer, because if you don't ask those questions, it's going to stress you out the entire process. But feel comfortable asking questions. That's one thing we pride ourselves on, that, we make sure that the simplest question is answered with thoroughness.
All right. Well, you definitely experienced that here. I want to thank you, gentlemen, for joining us. James Bunyan of the Millennium 3 Realty. We also had Mr. Marc R. Williams of the NARAP. He's on the NARAP board, but also a senior executive there at PRMG. And so I am Zachary Rinkins, standing in for our host, Bill Diggs. And this has been Black Prosperity with the Miami-Dade Economic Advocacy Trust here on Miami Community News. We've had a lot of fun, and we'll see you next